30 seconds and counting.
Aye.
Astronauts report it
Aye.
feels good. T-minus 25 seconds.
Aye. Feet 5'4", nothing to a giant. Waited my turn, call it perfect time and trust the most high. Got the stars aligning, I was tapped in. I've been strategizing, dreams coming true. I've been fantasizing while you criticize. Pay attention to the signs, symbolize. Feel like a legend, they go idolize. Ayy, I'm a hero, wear my cape. Independent leader made a way. I'm the people's voice, hip hip parade. Stuck to my pace, the turtle win the race. There's trophies on trophies, views from the townscape. Change is great, break, then I had to skate. God told me time to go elevate. Chosen child, I'm the champ now, not a featherweight. Man, I'm so blessed, I just meditate. Peace of mind, that's what you get when you out the way. By any means, I just listen what Malcolm say. Studied the game, I'm a student, learned every day. Stacking my bucks and I'm not talking Tampa Bay. Running the game, feel like first in the relay. Hand me my medal, took it to new levels. All gas on the pedal, not stagnant, could settle, nah. Yeah, hey, we see you very soon. This what I'm here to do. Here to inspire you. We headed to the moon. Look, yeah, I'm living proof. About to bless off like Zoo. We about to take the roof.
We have a liftoff.
We headed to the moon. This for the culture, stacking our beats like it's Folgers. We on the move, we in motion. I believe I got a notion. Nothing but love, that's devotion. Budgets don't cost me, I'm with the commotion. I can be Batman, then turn to the Joker. Debo with the loafers. I'm trying to stay focused. I see it, I want it. That's hocus and pocus. And voila, it's all in my hands, but I give it to Allah. He blessed me with more and more overflow. Tada, I know I'm the best. I don't need your fake shout outs. I'm putting the work like an OVO night owl. The realest, you see it. I know that you notice. I keep it 100, never sugarcoated. I'm locked and I'm loaded. Pockets getting bloated. The goat on the mic, you definitely who they voted. Yeah, hey, we see you very soon. This what I'm here to do. Here to inspire you. We headed to the moon. Look, yeah, I'm living proof. About to blast off like Zoo. We about to take the roof.
We have a liftoff.
We headed to the moon.
Hello and welcome to Inspired Earth, everybody. I hope that you guys are having a great week. I just wanted to give a couple quick shout outs. And that song was To the Moon by True Def. Trudef. True Def. And that song was so cool, talking about God, inspiration. We're here to inspire you. I loved it. It's like the intro, it's the label. I'm so happy to have that song. I'd like to start out with a shout out to Robin for always having positive and intellectual feedback. Thank you so much, Robin. I really appreciate that. And a shout out to all the people across the internet who have joined from various places this week. Welcome and thank you to all the listeners. We're going to take a walk through time and space of human beings through this episode here. In the past few thousand years, we've had the Amazonian Enigma, which we're currently unearthing, the secrets of Terra Preta, Dark Earth, an ancient Amazonian wonder that could hold the key to sustainable farming and saving our planet. Going back a little bit further in time from there, we will have human and Neanderthal involving prehistoric pandemics going all the way back to 800,000 years ago. From there, we'll be talking about an ancient fish that breathes air and a prehistoric Antarctic tropical life fossil that we found. That's really interesting. Further, we'll be talking about rethinking the blueprints of life as we know it, which is mind-boggling. And everybody loves the rescues, so we'll have 2 of those at the end, 2 miracle rescue stories. And be sure to share your thoughts and theories on the discoveries as well in the comments or email. So everybody enjoy. So to start off, we're going to talk about 40 years ago this week marks the day that Bruce McCandless II, a NASA astronaut, had done the first untethered spacewalk. And so he was just floating out in space totally untethered. February 7th, 1984. So that's pretty interesting. 40 years ago. And it was using the Manned Maneuvering Unit during Space Shuttle mission STS-41B. So before we got too far into this, I also wanted to mention NASA scientists have talked about the analysis of the fragments they recovered from asteroid Bennu, which I feel like we've been waiting on for a long time, and the results show that it was from an ancient ocean world that was smaller than Enceladus, and that it was hit by some sort of asteroid or something, and that they determined that from the calcium and magnesium rich phosphate mineral, which has never been seen before on meteorites. And it was only the third time in history that we were able to grab bits of an asteroid and return it to Earth. In the case of the asteroid Bennu, the round trip took 7 years in total and covered a considerable distance of 6.21 billion kilometers, or 3.86 billion miles. The sample capsule arrived back safely in September 2023. And that they're looking through the asteroid fragments, and the largest are 3.5 centimeters or 1.4 inches across, and that it represents leftover material from the formation of the solar system some 4.5 billion years ago, that we think, at least. And the understanding of where it came from will teach us more about where we came from. So this one is super interesting, and you guys will start to notice that there's patterns, and you'll start to pick up on these patterns if you haven't already, and you'll start to see that these things resurface over and over and over, even if they're trying to get covered up. And Art Bell talked about this, and I'm going to talk about this, but the topics that we talk about are ahead of the curve, and that's why you're going to have them come back over and over, is because we're talking about stuff that's changing the world. So once you start hearing about it from everybody, you've already have known about it because you were listening to Inspired Earth, or you're looking at the news and you're educated about the forthcoming technologies and paradigm shifts that are occurring around us. Because everybody thinks that society is just stagnant or something, or that we're just slowly going upwards. But society and humans and people and individuals are constantly changing. Everybody's constantly changing. The whole cosmos is constantly changing places and status and energy levels, and everything's constantly changing. So just don't be afraid of that. Just lean into the change and know that it's a good thing, because you can start to control the future at that point, because you know it's going to change. So you might as well try to meld it into your own scope of it, which is what we're doing with the podcast here. And as well with what we're talking about with the Amazonian Terra Preta, is that I feel like some of this stuff has happened before on Earth, and the civilizations have had like a rise and fall. And that's part of why some of the indigenous people are so good at sustainability and healing the Earth, is because the Earth was really screwed up for them. So they, if you want to use the term terraform, like we would for another planet, they had terraformed the planet back into more of a garden state. And that's why indigenous people of the last 12,000 years have so many methods and techniques and technologies, such a firm understanding of how to heal and sustain the Earth, because they existed after the great cataclysm that had ended all the previous civilizations. The technologies that survived the cataclysms were used to terraform the Earth the best they could, as rapidly as they could before the knowledge was lost through the generations and time, because they can't remember everything, and it'll just get lost as it goes on, which I think we have some evidence for of the rise and fall of civilization. But the people 12,000 years ago were still carrying on traditions of people and knowledge of people way further in the past, is my belief. And we're going to talk about how we have evidence of humans being around 500,000 to 800,000 years ago. All of this that we're talking about is in the last 12,000 years. Is all of the human civilization that we know about is in the last 12,000 years. And then if you press back 90,000 years before that, all of the evidence that was there was destroyed by this ice age that was receding and growing back and forth, waxing and waning. And that was basically like a blender or a sander, like a sand grinder on any sort of civilizations in the majority of the earth. And there's only these little tiny places that we have that show us the glimpses and clues into the past. And even how we analyze and interpret that data, we don't even really know what we're doing with that. We're constantly reanalyzing it or reassessing how we're analyzing it and realizing that we're doing it wrong and figuring new stuff out. So here we go with mysterious dark earth created by ancient Amazonians could hold the key to saving humanity. Ancient humans living in the Amazon jungle created their own extremely fertile soil, and its contents and potential to save the world is blowing archaeologists away. In the rainforest, mysterious patches of black fertile soil are scattered across the vast Amazon rainforest. They stick out like a sore thumb given that traditional soil that dominates the region is red. Archaeologists and scientists have long thought that the soil is man-made, though they had no way to prove it. In recent months, however, extensive field work and studies in the Amazon region have turned up compelling evidence to suggest that the suspicions are true. It could, they say, change everything we know about not only this region and its history, but the very organic matter that is vital to humans' well-being. So, Amazonians understood the life cycle and dirt and microbes and life way further back than we thought. And we don't even understand this stuff today. So I feel like we really need to give them some credit regarding that sort of thing. And it's beautiful. It's really cool. And I hope that we can learn how to heal the planet with this ancient technology that they probably got from people before them. That's what I would bet. But it says that multiple researchers from MIT, University of Florida, and Federal University of Santa Catarina combined soil analyses, ethnographic observation, and interviews with modern indigenous communities to conclude that Terra Preta was purposely created by ancient Amazonians. This could change everything, Lucas Silva, an environmental scientist at the University of Oregon, who is not involved in the study, told the journal. MIT scientists said, "We argue here that people played a role in creating dark Earth and intentionally modified the ancient environment to make it a better place for human populations. The dark Earth contains considerable amounts of stored carbon that has been collected over hundreds to thousands of years, which each generation enriching the soil with food scraps, charcoal, and waste, became more concentrated in natural resources. What has scientists excited is the unintentional carbon sequestration. It could, they say, be used to mitigate the negative effects of climate change." So, once again, the Amazonians were storing carbon in the ground for thousands of years. So that does mean, that proves right there that they learned it from their ancients. The fact that it was done for thousands of years. So, But who started that? That's a really good question. Let's continue on here. Maybe we could adapt some of the indigenous strategies on a larger scale to lock up carbon in soil in ways that we now know would stay there for a long time. Crops grow much better on Terra Preta because the dark soil is rich in phosphorus, nitrogen, and calcium. It is ordinarily found near archaeological sites and contains charcoal, organic matter from food remains like fish and animal bones, as well as artifacts such as pottery shards. All hints at ancient civilizations were intentionally adding to it and creating the soil, which, if true, is a breakthrough discovery. Morgan Schmidt, an archaeologist and geographer, and his team looked at the soil in Cuicuro indigenous territory on the upper Xingu River in the southeastern Amazon of Brazil. There, they analyzed soil from 4 archaeological sites and 2 historic villages occupied from 1973 to 1983. They also looked at one modern village, and radiocarbon dating of the lands found the oldest sample to be 5,000 years old, where other samples range from 300 years old to 1,000 years old. That's incredible. Collecting soil from mounds bordering the ancient and historic villages, the scientists compared it with Terra Preta and found that soil from residential areas contained more than double the organic carbon and was less acidic, making it more fertile. When they analyzed soil from Kukiro 2, they found a similar pattern. Interviews with the villages turned up even more interesting information. Villagers referred to the soil as igepi and described the processes in which they created and cultivated the soil to improve its fertility. One farmer said charcoal and ash are swept and gathered up and then thrown in with the plant to turn it into a beautiful ikabi. There we can plant sweet potatoes. When you plant there is no ikabi, the soil is weak. That is why we throw the ash peelings and pulp. The results will prove pivotal in understanding not only rich cultural and historical practices of the Amazon, but also future humanity practices. The study concludes modern sustainable agriculture and climate change mitigation efforts, inspired by the persistent fertility of ancient dark earth, and can draw on traditional methods practiced by indigenous Amazonians. So it's crazy how if you just go and ask the indigenous communities themselves what they did, that they will tell you about it instead of just assuming and inferring that you know better than they did. That's really interesting. And it's crazy that it's 2024 and now we have MIT and the University of Florida telling us something that the Amazonians knew 5,000 years ago. Hey, here's how to save the earth and not have the atmosphere messed up and how to have food and grow stuff. So I mean, I'm being half joking about that, but honestly, for a long time we thought that we knew better than these people and they knew way more than us. We just assumed otherwise. So we need to look at the lessons of the past, and part of another article I'm going to be talking about deals with that exact thing. With these next couple, it's all related to Neanderthal and human, which is about 45,000 years ago is when the Neanderthal began to die out. And with the Amazon, that was around 5,000 years ago that we know of. That could change easily and probably will. But in Germany, they had found Isenhol Cave, Il's Cave in English, which is a Paleolithic hidey hole for animals like hibernating bears and cave hyenas, who were present in Europe for about 1 million years. The cave, which is nestled directly below a castle from the same rock formation, and was also an occasional safe haven for modern human ancestors migrating in waves to Europe in the last 46,000 years. But Isenhol isn't just a prehistoric sanctuary for scientists. Its stratified layers are now a time capsule, give an unprecedented overlap into the timelines of anatomically modern humans and another hominid ancestor, Neanderthal. In a paper published Wednesday in the journal Nature, an archaeological analysis of skeletal remains excavated from the cave in 2016 and 2022 places our modern human ancestors north of the Alps in the earliest 45,000 years ago. That means that before the Neanderthals went extinct around 40,000 years ago. So, ancient and modern humans coexisted in that region for thousands of years. So that's like a 5,000 year overlap that Neanderthal and humans were working together and living together. It says that they were fighting to adapt to the harsh cold, and that most of the people in the world carry Neanderthal DNA, and around 1 to 4% of the people in Europe or Asian background have it. Scientists have sought to better understand the timeline of Neanderthal and human existence, especially with regard to stone tool technology, which was a motivation behind the new paper. And around 45,000 years ago, a new type of tool emerged, and it characterized by a leaf-like shape. I guess from them like cutting it off or breaking it off into different angles to make it like a leaf. These tools have been across northwestern Europe, spanning from Wales to the UK to Poland. And nobody knew who the makers were, Neanderthal or human. But they found some bone in this cave, and they analyzed the 13 skeletal remains, and they determined that the Homo sapiens had been occupying the site for as early as 47,000 years ago. That's a very long time. The researchers also ran a genetic analysis of whatever mitochondrial DNA remained and sketched out a family tree. Most of the bits of bone shared the same mitochondrial DNA sequences. This indicates the fragments belonged to the same individual or were maternal relatives, linking these new finds with the ones from decades ago. That raises some questions. Was this a single population? What could be the relationship? But the mitochondrial DNA, that's only one side of the history. It's only the maternal side. We need to have a nuclear DNA to be able to start looking into this. It's very strange that it would all have the same mitochondrial DNA in that cave for, well, I guess that's just that one set of fossils they're looking at. Another development is the recognition that Neanderthal groups were culturally complex, so we should not necessarily assume that all middle to upper Paleolithic transitional industries, because they differ from those preceding the middle Paleolithic, must have been made by modern humans. For example, a lack of consensus surrounds the identity of the groups associated with the two transitional industries. And then I wrote a little note here on that, and it says that different species progress differently technologically, perhaps more locally rather than by species. And what I mean by that is that perhaps the technology was more local than it was based on species, and that would make sense on why they would find local populations with a genetic heredity that's similar, is because they're staying around the same area. So that's kind of what I mean, is that a lot of them would stay in the same area, so the technology would stay there. Some of them would be traveling, but I don't know how many. And yeah, I think that the technology was localized. With these new findings, They dispelled the hypothesis that Neanderthal disappeared from northwestern Europe well before our modern ancestors arrived on the scene. What those last thousands of years look like for Neanderthal has yet to be fully resolved. At least the Neanderthal genetic legacy lives on within us. And here we have some pictures from Germany and the jawbones and stuff of what we're looking at. And it says that Germany at that time was 15 Celsius colder than today, and it was more akin to Siberia or northern Scandinavia than Germany. So that kind of gives you an idea of how bitterly cold it was and why they were hiding in holes. We're going to quickly go through these Neanderthal ones. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on them, but they are really interesting and they link together. And that's why I'm kind of jumping through multiple of these that all came out in like the last week. I think the oldest one was like a month ago. But these are all, this is February 2nd right here. First known tuberculosis case in Neanderthal revealed in prehistoric analysis. And a look at 2 Neanderthal skeletons reveals that they could get tuberculosis and it may have contributed to their extinction. Neanderthal living in Central Europe 35,000 years ago suffered from TB, tuberculosis. A new DNA analysis of their bones reveal. This is the first time the disease has been identified in Neanderthal, raising questions about tuberculosis contributing to their extinction. And they had found they said that it's extremely important to the middle to late Paleolithic site, and hominin remains found in those layers near the entrance were from a female and an adult. The child was of 3 to 4 years of age at the time of death. The child died around 33 to 44 or 34,000 years ago, while the adult died 37 to 38,000 years ago, which is earlier. And already interesting for the comparatively recent rates of death, as Neanderthal went extinct around this time, the bones of Subalyuk and individuals hold additional clues about their lives, and possibly about their deaths. Distinct evidence of skeletal infection was found on both Neanderthal, including bony lesions along the spine of the adult and the interior of the child's skull. These skeletal changes, called lytic sesions, reflect bone loss, which results in holes. The holes are then filled with new bone, while lytic lesions can occur because of a number of diseases such as cancer. The location and patterning within the bodies of Subalyuk Neanderthal suggests strongly a diagnosis of tuberculosis. And that brings up the questions of how did they get it? Evidence of TB in large animals across ancient Europe, particularly bison, suggests an answer. Neanderthal who were hunting and eating these animals likely contracted TB from them. So tuberculosis posed a danger both through being a direct health risk and decimating prey animal populations. And it all comes back to TB. Tuberculosis is a nasty, nasty bug, and it's really important that we have stuff to be able to fight that. And that's why we've talked about antibiotic efficacy on this podcast before, and being able to mechanically shred those bad bugs, because TB has been around for so long. It's the nastiest thing. It's persistent, and it just spreads, and it's bad. But them having TB could definitely been a contributor to their extinction. And I had that little note that I wrote here that it made me think of that as well, that we're talking about a prehistoric pandemic. We just are coming out of a pandemic, so that's pretty interesting. But people with Neanderthal DNA were more susceptible to COVID during that time. And that kind of makes me have a question of, was their immune system more attuned to different types of illnesses than we were? Perhaps they were exposed to different things or not exposed to different things. For example, a pathogen they encountered and adapted to in the past made the Neanderthal more susceptible to other things later on. Or a different theory that I also was thinking of was that it was saying that they had extreme cold temperatures. So possibly in some way of the Neanderthal trying to adapt to the cold could have made them more susceptible to infection somehow. Those are just two theories that I thought of while I was reading it, but it did make me curious of it. And this one was very, very interesting. I was surprised when I found it because it was so recent and I hadn't seen it, and it's so related to what we're talking about, and it pushes back the date even further than I had thought. Because I was thinking 400,000 years ago, 500,000 years ago was how long humans had been around, which, once again, our whole known civilizations, all of our known civilizations, have all occurred in the past 12,000 years. Because before that, we got hit with 90,000 years of ice blender glacial freeze. But then we find out that humans were around 800,000 years ago, is what this article suggests. Is that other evidence from fossil DNA suggests Neanderthal and modern human lineage separated between 500,000 years ago to 650,000 years ago. Previous estimates indicated the divergence occurred over 800,000 years ago. So that's close to 1,000,000 years ago. Whenever this split occurred, the presence of Neanderthal didn't stray far from us. Genetically, we're 99.7% identical, which is 800,000 years ago. I mean, what could have happened on the Earth in that amount of time? Here we have amateur paleontologists discover site of epic importance from 470 million years ago. Whoa. 2 amateur paleontologists have discovered a site of worldwide importance in France containing nearly 400 fossils that date back 470 million years. The site of Montagne Noire is one of the world's richest and most diverse fossil sites, dating to the Ordovician period. Ordovician period, I think that's how you pronounce that, which lasted for about 42 million years, during a time which southern Europe, Africa, South America, Antarctica, and Australia were all together in a supercontinent that was moving to the South Pole. It was heading straight for the South Pole. Amateurs who came across the fossils were over the moon when they realized the importance of their discovery. We've been prospecting and searching for fossils since the age of 20. When we came across this amazing biota, we understood the importance of the discovery and went from amazement to excitement. The fossils are in a remarkable state of preservation and contain extremely rare, soft elements such as digestive systems and cuticles. Oh my god, that's so cool. It's also kind of creepy, but really cool. Analysis of the site known as Cabray's biota, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, revealed the presence of arthropods, a group that includes millipedes and shrimps, cynidrians, which include jellyfish and corals, as well as many algae and sponges. The site's high biodiversity suggests the area served as a refuge for the species that escaped the high temperature of the prevailing north at that time. Moreover, this biota was once located very close to the South Pole, revealing the composition of Ordovician southernmost ecosystems. At this time of intense global warming, animals were indeed living in the high latitude refugia, escaping extreme equatorial temperatures. Using innovative methods and techniques, they aim to reveal the internal and external anatomy of these organisms, as well as to deduce their phylogenetic relationships and modes of life in the polar ecosystem. That is so cool. You guys know I love the Antarctic. You know I love old ancient stuff and the ocean. That just is like all the checklists. And the fact that they're going to get all these MRI, laser imaging, radar, who knows what they're going to use to find the organs in those things. And I'm excited to see all of that. And the fact that the Antarctic region used to be like tropical and had all these weird fish scuttling around at the bottom and sucker feeding off of each other. It's just so weird and really cool at the same time. But it makes me think of how much the earth changes. We already talked about change earlier and that things don't stay the same. Well, that's a big change. Antarctica being a jungle or a swamp. And here we go with a very similar type of thing, but it was a fish that breathes air. And I'm just going to skim through this because I wanted to tell you guys about it. And I apologize in advance for my pronunciation. Scientists discover bizarre 380 million year old ancient fish. The rivers of Australia, which once flowed across this now dry interior, used to host a range of bizarre animals, including a sleek, predatory lobe-finned fish with large fangs and bony scales. The newly described fish fossil in remote fossil fields West Alice Springs has named Haragiasidecitus zoomini by an international team of researchers led by Flinders University paleontologist Dr. Brian Chu. The fossil was named for the Haragica sandstone where the fossils were found, and the ancient Greek Dectus biter. It also pays homage to Professor Min Zhu, currently at Chinese Academy of Sciences in Beijing, who has made some major contribution to the research of early vertebrates. One of the ancient tetrapodomorph lineages, some of which became ancestors of limbed tetrapods, which later became humans, Hedragicadetes is particularly distinctive for its large opening on the top of their skull. This spherical structure are thought to facilitate surface air breathing, with modern-day African birchfish having similar structures for taking in air at the water's surface. They described the fish as being 40 centimeters. And here I have the Dr. Brian Chu. And this thing, it's a big fossil. And it's like a whole fossil, too. That's what's crazy. It's a big whole fossil. And here it says that synchronized appearance of this air-breathing adaptation may have coincided with the time of decreased atmospheric oxygen during the mid-Devonian period. I had to look that one up. The ability to supplement gill respiration with aerial oxygen likely afforded an adaptive advantage. And they have pictures of the like a 3D rendering of its head from the fossil. It looks like it was found smack dab right in the middle of Australia. But I'm really excited to see all the laser imaging and MRI and radar, or however else they're going to see all the internal organs of this thing. And this publication is the culmination of 50 years of exploration and research. ANU professor Gavin Young discovered a specimen in 1973, and attempts to study these fossils proved to be troublesome until Flinders University in 2016 expedition found a complete specimen. That's what I was saying, is this thing is nearly complete. I'm scrolling up right now to the picture again, and this thing is huge, and he's wearing a jellyfish shirt. That's funny. This fossil demonstrates that all the isolated bits and pieces collected over the years belong to a single type of ancient fish. Wow, congratulations to those people working on that for 50 years, and you finally get proof. So cool. This one I'm gonna have to take some time to read a little bit, but I am gonna skim through part of it. This is just too crazy not to bring up, and it's about changing your mindset, changing all of our mindsets, challenging you, me, and science, and all humans. So this is a big one. It's time to admit that genes are not the blueprint for life. DNA. The view of biology often presented to the public is oversimplified and out of date. Scientists must set the record straight, argues a new book. And this is How Life Works, A User's Guide to New Biology. Philip Ball in 2024 just came out For too long, scientists have been content at espousing the lazy metaphor of living systems operating like simple machines, which I just gave that reference like a couple podcasts ago. So once again, this is challenging even me because I just gave that example. It is important to be open about the complexity of biology, including what we don't know, because the public understanding affects policy, healthcare, and trust in science. Hear, hear, preach it, brother. So long as we insist that cells are computers and genes are their code, Ball says, life might as well be sprinkled with invisible magic, which is kind of funny because I think that is in a ironic way kind of what he's like advocating for a little bit, is invisible magic, but we'll continue on. I just thought that was ironic that he said that, but I get his point, but I can see invisible magic being on both sides of this coin. But reality is far more interesting and wonderful. So I guess it's even more interesting than invisible magic. I like that. As he explains in Must Read User's Guide for Biologists, when the human genome was sequenced in 2001, many thought it would prove to be an instruction manual for life, but the genome turned out to be no blueprint. In fact, most genes don't have a preset function that can be determined from their DNA sequence. So it's just a bunch of gibberish, basically, is what they found out. Instead, genes' activity, whether they expressed or not, for instance, or the length of the protein that they encode, depend on a myriad of external factors, from the diet to the environment in which the organism develops, and each trait can be influenced by genes. For example, mutations in almost 300 genes have been identified as indicating a risk that a person will develop schizophrenia. It's therefore a huge oversimplification, notes Ball, to say that genes cause this trait or that disease. The reality is that organisms are an extremely robust and particular function can often be performed even when key genes are removed. For instance, although the HCN4 gene encodes a protein that acts as the heart's primary pacemaker, the heart retains its rhythm even if the gene is mutated. So it's not so simple. Even if that gene controls that function, even if you change that gene, it doesn't change the function. That's confusing. But they're finding out why and what that means. And another metaphor that Ball criticizes is that a protein with a fixed shape binding to its target being similar to how a key fits into a lock, which I just gave that example not that long ago. I feel like it's a decent concept, stepping stone, but we need better ones. If he has better ones, then I want to hear it. But this is another part that's really interesting. Many proteins, he points out, have disordered domains, sections whose shape is not fixed, but changes constantly. Which he used the word disordered, but it just changes constantly. And that's an interesting term of phrase, because I have a whole book that I have planned just for that sort of terminology and that exact topic that we're talking about, of that use of phrase. Also, if you think about proteins constantly changing shape, and what that means is, should we be that freaked out over proteins changing their shape from cooking? Because for a long time, by what I mean by a long time is the last couple decades, scientists have been looking at proteins changing their shape from cooking, because every time we heat proteins, they change their shape. So is that causing cancer? Is that doing all this sorts of bad stuff? We don't know. But that's a really interesting thing to look at, especially with everything else that this guy was just saying. But further, it makes me think of mad cow disease with the prion disease. Because what is a prion? Which is like what caused the mad cow disease, the spongioencephalitis, like a degenerative brain disease. It is caused by basically what we could call maybe an anti-protein, or like a protein that's gone haywire. if diseases like prion disease can be caused by proteins, and we just found out about them, I feel like that fits in with this what this guy is saying, and there could be a whole lot more out there that we don't even know about. So that was just something that came to my mind, because mad cow was a really big deal a couple decades ago, but this fuzziness and imprecision is not sloppy design. And he's talking about the proteins that have disordered domains that constantly move, constantly changing shape proteins. And that it's an essential feature of the protein interaction. Being disordered makes the proteins versatile communicators, able to respond rapidly to changes in the cell, binding to different partners and transmitting different signals depending on the circumstances. For example, the protein aconitase, and I'm sorry if that's not how you pronounce that, can switch from metabolizing sugar to promoting iron intake to red blood cells when iron is scarce. Almost 70% of proteins remain disordered. Classic view of evolution should be questioned. Evolution is often regarded as a slow affair of letting random mutations change one amino acid for another and seeing what effect it produces. But in fact, proteins are typically made up of several sections called modules. Reshuffling, duplicating, and tinkering with these modules is a common way to produce a new useful protein. So that makes you think of how life got started to begin with. Is they say that it's just a bunch of proteins and amino acids being slapped together with chemical reactions and lightning or whatever. Well, it could actually have a lot more chance of success than we ever thought, because people had interpreted that as being really astronomical, and it might still be astronomical, but it's a lot less astronomical than we thought. Way less based on this. In fact, it's chaos could be a contributing factor to the universe, or to life being created. We talked about earlier a different episode about how viruses spread DNA around, and that's something that we have to come to terms with as humans, is this duality of our existence and the duality of the universe, that things that cause death also cause life. Like the glaciers and the water cycle caused all this death of the civilizations, but we can't live without the water, and water cycles constantly bring in new life. And with this, we see the same exact type of thing, that changes in proteins that we thought were not good may end up being good. Or we had the same thing with the tardigrades, with the oxidative stress. They thought the oxidative stress was bad, and then they turned out that it was good and that it was helping their body. So all of our understandings of these things are very askewed, and we need a more nuanced view of how to analyze things, that things can both kill and produce life at the same time. And that's like a very spiritual thing, if you want to think of it like that. If you look at the yin and yang of the male and female of the universe, creation of life, that there is no creation without destruction, there is no destruction without creation, and destruction is the first step of creation. As soon as you destroy something, the next step is creating something from it or in its place, whether it be a person or a structure or a pattern or whatever. But this is all really, really deep, but that's why this is important, is because it's about changing our mindset of this sort of stuff. This is very mind bending, and that's a good thing. We need our minds bent. Later in the book, Ball grapples with the philosophical question of what makes an organism alive. Agency, the ability of an organism to bring about change to itself or its environment to achieve a goal, is this author's central focus. Such agency, he argues, is attributable to whole organisms, not just their genomes. Genes, proteins, and processes such as evolution don't have goals, but a person certainly does. So too do plants and bacteria. On a more simple level, A bacterium might avoid some stimuli and be drawn to others, for instance. Dethroning that genome in this way contests the current standard thinking about biology, and I think that such a challenge is sorely needed. Ball is not alone in calling for a drastic rethink of how scientists discuss biology. There has been a flurry of publications in the vein in the past year, written by me and others, all outline reasons to define what genes do. All highlight the physiological processes by which organisms control their genomes, and all argue that agency and purpose are definitive characteristics of life and have been overlooked in conventional gene-centric views of biology, because all of these things that they're talking about would not be characterized as life. The purpose of activity represents a frustrated thought that it is time to become impatient with the old view, as Ball said. Genetics alone cannot help us to understand and treat many of the diseases that cause the biggest healthcare burdens, such as schizophrenia, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. These conditions are physiological at their core, and the author points out, despite having genetic components, they are nonetheless caused by cellular processes gone awry. These holistic processes are what we must understand if we are to find cures. Ultimately, Ball concludes, we are at the beginning of a profound rethinking of how life works. In my view, beginning is the key word here. I was just talking about that. Scientists take care not to substitute an old set of dogmas with a new one. It's time to stop pretending that give or take a few bits and pieces we know how life works. Instead, we must let our ideas evolve as more discoveries are made in the coming decades. Sitting in uncertainty while working to make those discoveries will be biology's greatest task for the 21st century. And here we have with the rescue, Connie the container dog, who was trapped inside a shipping container for more than a week before the Coast Guard found her, is pregnant. And we've got pictures here of a smiling puppy dog. The telltale sounds were coming from a container 25 feet in the air, necessitating an immediate crane to bring it down to the ground. As soon as we opened it, we could see the little dog's face poking out, Petty Officer Second Class told Associated Press. The dog had been stuck in the container for at least 8 days. She just seemed happy more than anything to be out of that dark space and in the arms of people who were going to take care of her. On the car ride to the local animal shelter, she just wanted to be pet the entire time. Connie, short for Connie the container dog, after being held at the shelter, in case an owner came forward, she was ultimately taken in by Maryland-based nonprofit Forever Changed Animal Rescue. On Wednesday, the rescue organization announced that a veterinary exam had determined Connie was a mother-to-be. The fetuses have strong heartbeats and were bouncing around, so while her pregnancy is guarded due to her being without food and water for 8 days, we are hopeful given what we could see. So it's incredible that her pups are all still alive and the pregnancy is still going on despite her being super dehydrated and hungry, and I hope that she'll make a full recovery. And the people in Maryland, you might want to look into getting a Connie the dog puppy, and people in Houston, maybe you can too. It says that she came from Houston. So Texas and Maryland people, you might want to call this, if you want this lucky dog. You'll probably get some good luck rubbed off of you for getting that dog. I just wanted to take a second for everybody to say thank you for watching this if you finished this, and some housekeeping stuff super quick, that YouTube and Google are the same company and they changed their podcast protocols type of stuff. So if you're watching on YouTube, there's going to be a new section that pops up called podcasts, and normally I would be uploading the videos manually, but with this new thing that they're adding, which is new, I didn't do anything, this is all of them, it's gonna automatically be uploading to YouTube every time I upload an episode, which makes it easier for me, but you're not gonna have the video. And right now I know it's just me talking, but eventually I hope to get a green screen so the people that want to watch the green screen or the video or me or whatever I'm showing, That'll be available on video on YouTube, but you got to go to the video section to find it. The podcast will be audio only, and for anybody that doesn't care, you can find it on whatever audio platform you want. And I'm so glad to have you guys listening. And my email is inspiredearthpodcast@gmail.com. And I welcome any sort of positive comments or feedback or anything like that. I hope that you guys are safe and that this made you think. This one, I tried to not have it too long, but have a lot of content in it. And the last one with the biology really was, that was so cool. So cool. And I have another article that I couldn't fit in, but I will fit in later on that fits with all of these topics that we'll enjoy later on. I told you about how the patterns will continue, and I'm sure that you'll see more, and I look forward to finding more patterns out with you guys in the future. Be safe out there.